Good day, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I certainly am. I had just gotten a haircut today, so I'm feeling pretty good. And the psychological analyses, I suppose, that have been going on for about a month are nearing the end and should be wrapped up in the next fortnight. So everything's going all well and fine. As you may notice, there is a bit more light in the room than what you may be accustomed to. That's because I have the shade up. And you know what it means when I have the shade up. That means it's time for another book review. So I believe this is the third book review that I've done on this channel. We covered Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist a few months back, and then like a week or two ago we talked about Edgar Wallace's Terror Keep, and now, I suppose, as this third book review, as promised in the last one, I will be discussing a book by an author who, I must say, is perhaps the number one influence on me in terms of my writing career. And the author in question is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and the book is Beyond the City. I have two copies of this book. I have this one here, which is a print-on-demand book from either Amazon or eBay. And I also have it in this collection, the works of Doyle, just like a little bind-up. I have that right there. I read it in this collection because it was a bit easier for me to read, because the type was not. It was more easy on my eyes, rather. And this here, I don't really like to spend much time on a line, but when it's all spread out like this, then you spend quite a bit of time on one line and really go slower than you should. But anyway, if you were to read this book from a modern 21st century perspective, you will find that this book was written in 1892. You will find that it's kind of ahead of its time in the fact that it's a kind of a feminist type of a piece, really. Something that Conan Doyle didn't really discover all that much in his, Sherlock Holmes stories or his Professor Challenger stories or anything else. But anyway, I'll get into what this thing is about. So the reason why it's called Beyond the City is because it takes place in the suburbs just outside of London and concerns the lives of three families. One being headed by a retired Navy admiral, the other being headed by a doctor who is getting on in years, and the last one being headed by this feminist character called Mrs. Westmacott. And these three families are, I suppose, linked by fate, really, because they both live in the same neighborhood, and, they occupy the houses, right next to each other. There's 1, 2, and 3, so they're fairly close in terms of proximity. But also, they are entwined in part due to the fact of the habits and proclivities of this character, Ms. Westmacott. Now, she is a very muscular type of a woman. She lifts dumbbells and such, and is very rebellious, smokes cigarettes, and basically is fighting for the emancipation of women, and has even meetings in London on the subject and such. And essentially, she her influence is actually stronger than I suppose at the time one might think, in the fact that somebody who's rather set in his ways, in saying that men and women have their own places in the world, actually has their opinions changed by this woman, because of, I suppose, her own interests being likened to his own. And also, the doctor, whose wife had passed several years ago, does also take a fancy to Miss Westmacott because of her views and such, and it is believed that he may potentially marry her, and his daughters actually are very concerned about this and such, and also various other things coalesce and sort of amount to they all lead back to Ms. Westmacott and her very, I suppose, unconventional views and such, and even her life story and past as well. I'm making it sound more interesting than it might. That's because really it's sort of a family drama, and concerns more or less, it concerns the state of these three families in terms of financial troubles and personal drama and romance even. And in the last few chapters of this book, it sort of isn't necessarily all that compelling, as there's a lot of, well, let's just say this. Be prepared to read a lot about the selling of pensions in the last, 30 pages of this book. I will say that this book is not for everyone. It is not Conan Doyle's best work. I'm glad I read it, because it's one thing less, that I have to read in his catalogue, and I do plan to read everything he's written. But it's very short, you can see. It shouldn't take you more than maybe 2 hours to read. And they even have an audio book on YouTube that's 1 hour and 40, so just listen to it there if you really want to. I will say that if you do not really... If you're not somebody like me, who's a hardcore Conan Doyle fan, you may get bored with it very quickly, especially in the latter half. So I would not recommend this to everybody. Ahab, maybe, because, he's a great lover of literature, but definitely not the average Joe. So I would say, read this book, either if you're a hardcore Conan Doyle fan, like myself, or if you just want to, I suppose, have a comparison of how women were viewed in the 19th century and how they're sort of being represented nowadays, because something tells me that Conan Doyle was a bit prophetic in this regard. But anyway, I myself, I guess I could say that I liked this book. And as I said, it's not for everyone. If you find it in like one little compilation like this, maybe give it a read. Otherwise, you could probably skip it. I think. And yeah, like I said, don't really read it. Don't go out of your way to read it because it's not very. Let's just say it's not necessarily as good as any of the Sherlock Holmes stuff, or The Lost World, or even The White Company, or Sir Nigel. If you're planning to read all those works, save this one maybe towards the end. Even though it is short, as I said, it kind of drags a little. So, as I said, not for everybody. Anyway, that was a review of Beyond the City by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back hopefully soon again with another book review. Have no idea which book I'm going to review for you this next time, but I hope to see you soon. And like I said, there's an audiobook on YouTube that's an hour and 40 minutes. So if you can't find a copy, just listen to it there. So anyway, that's it. Stay tuned for another one, maybe, and have a good day.